An old boys' club say its critics a place which protects its own kind and a world where predatory officers are allowed to thrive. Today, the police inspectorate laid bare a culture of misogyny and questionable vetting across policing in England and Wales. Now, the report is deeply exposing and makes for uncomfortable reading. It lists that for a decade, police chiefs ignored warnings about serving police officers who had previous convictions for serious sexual assault. Instead, they were complacent, the report finds, and didn't appreciate the danger that posed to the public. Serving police officers who seemingly slipped through the net, like Wayne Couzens, known among some colleagues as the rapist, who went on to murder Sarah Everard. This report was commissioned after serious questions were raised about police recruitment and vetting.
Misogyny, sexism, racism was always in the form and disguised as banter.
Shabnam Chowdhury rose to be one of the Metropolitan Police's most senior female officers, but throughout her more than 30-year career, she says she experienced misogyny at virtually every level.
There used to be a saying throughout my journey within policing, which was, if you can't take a joke, then you shouldn't have joined the job.
I mean, Shabnam, you were in the Met for more than 30 years. Reviews came and went. I'm curious to know, internally, are they listened to?
The reviews were ignored, they were brushed under the carpet, they were cast aside. I don't recall any recommendations being implemented.
Of over 11,000 officers and police staff surveyed, they found female police officers alleging sexual assault by male colleagues at work, cases of male police officers sending pornography to female colleagues' phones, inappropriate sexual comments made by officers, including remarks about a victim's breasts, and some police making a point of stopping cars driven by women they thought were attractive, a practice they referred to as booty patrol. We've spoken to former senior police officers who say a culture of cover-ups and protecting those within the force is still prevalent. And if these recommendations don't have any statutory teeth, so to speak, will anything actually change? Today, the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak told police chiefs they must take action to change the culture and standards in their forces.
If you get the wrong people now, you're storing up problems.
Among the 43 recommendations made by the police inspectorate were more rigorous employment checks.
Vetting's never going to have a 100% guarantee, but the tougher your vetting, the greater the chance are that you will prevent the wrong sort of people joining policing.
You often hear senior police officers and politicians saying, you know, it's just a case of a few bad apples in the police force. Should they now accept, given the extent of your report, that that's just not true?
I don't think it can be characterised as a few bad apples. I think our report just found too many cases of people joining the police who, frankly, shouldn't be anywhere near a uniform.
Only today, 2 Metropolitan Police officers, Joel Borders in the hood and Jonathan Cobban in the grey hat, were sentenced to 3 months in prison but bailed pending an appeal after sharing what a judge called grossly offensive messages in a WhatsApp group with Wayne Couzens. As the body representing police chiefs said they would act on the report because, in their words, we cannot risk predatory or discriminatory individuals slipping through the net.
Joining me now is Steve Hartshorn, who's National Chair of the Police Federation of England and Wales, which represents rank-and-file officers. When you look at the details of this report, did you know a lot of this stuff, or did it really surprise you?
I think when you see it in black and white, it's quite stark and quite impactful about how bad and how big the scale of this abuse type is. So it's disappointing to see it hasn't been dealt with properly in the past, but I'm hoping this is a bit of a watershed moment where the police service will learn and start to implement all the recommendations that are contained within the report.
We'll come back to what changes now, but I mean, when you say that, you know, it's the magnitude of it, the scale of it in black and white, were you personally aware of, or have you even witnessed female colleagues being sexually harassed or even assaulted? Some of the examples.
Sadly, as a Police Federation representative, I have, because colleagues have come to me in the past and made representations that they've been either physically abused or mentally abused that they need to addressing. So I'll accompany them to senior officers to state their case for them. You then rely on the internal system to make sure they get looked after properly and that all those protections that should be in place are dealt with, but sadly it appears they're not.
Well, but so knowing that yourself, having that experience yourself, why didn't you stamp your feet and say, this has to change, this isn't good enough? This has been going on, I mean, it's been laid out for a decade in this report.
Yeah, we do. We've been repeatedly calling for senior officers to take a firmer stance, listen to the calls that myself, my colleagues in the Federation have been making for many years now to start clamping down on it.
So it's the leadership that's the problem?
Absolutely. When you're a junior PC and you're a constable or a sergeant, when you're going against a superintendent, a commander, a chief constable to say you've got real concerns and issues, there's only so much that they will listen to before you get told that basically stay in your lane. That's unacceptable. We make valid cases. We take them to those that have the ability to challenge and do something with them. The failure sits at the very top.
Well, that's really interesting because, you know, when the Sarah Everard murder happened, the then Met Police Chief, Cressida Dick, talked about unwitting sexism within the force. She was accused of playing it down, the problem. What you're saying suggests that you believe the culture is rotten to its core.
I think there are many good officers in the service and every single day the public will call for police to help them. The vast majority of my members are doing the best they can. But if there's been lapses in the way those have been dealt with, that's unacceptable. I don't think rotten to the core is perhaps the correct phrase. I think there is certainly a lot of officers that should not be in the service. We don't want them because they make it hard for us to police properly and effectively.
Well, that comes back to the vetting, because it's scarcely believable that police with criminal records kind of got through the vetting. How did that happen?
I know, and I read that today earlier, and for me, that with all due respect to security guards, they seem to go through a higher vetting level than a police officer does. Again, that's unacceptable. When you call the police, you expect a trained, accredited professional to deal with you that has got a reputation beyond reproach. So for me, looking at the recommendations in the report, I really do hope they're adopted in full so we can try to get back that confidence we so badly need with the public.
Well, on confidence, how can anyone have confidence in the police and your ability to change and to adopt these recommendations?
I think it's about listening to what we're saying. We are the very people that root out our own bad apples, is the current phrase, and there's too many of them. We take them, we will prosecute them, and hopefully, if they've committed those criminal acts, they'll go to prison for the things that they've done. We are saying unequivocally there is no place in policing for this kind of misconduct, misogyny, homophobia, sexism, anything that offends people. It's just not the place for policing. We don't want them.
Steve Hartshorn, thank you very much for joining us. Aisha.
Thanks, Kathy. Well, joining me now from Westminster is Parm Sandhu, who served as an officer in the Met for 30 years and rose to the rank of Chief Superintendent. She retired from policing 2 years ago. And here with me in the studio is Ben Jones, who was assaulted by a Derbyshire police officer and was awarded just under £20,000 in compensation. Ben, I just wanted to start with you. Tell us a little bit more about your story and what happened.
Thank you. Yeah, I was in a car in Derbyshire where it was a single-track lane. There was a police van came behind me, asked me to move the car, couldn't move the car. It was, like I said, it was a single-track lane. The officer got out. It was very aggressive from the start. I explained that I couldn't move the vehicle. I'd got my son in the car with me. I was on the way to an interview. And he went to the front of the car, took a photograph of the car, which was just very strange. About 15, 20 minutes later, they arrested somebody, I think, at the bottom of the road. There was a bit of a commotion going on. As I drove down the road, there was probably about 8 or 10 police officers there, and the same individual that took a photograph of the car and was a bit aggressive earlier was directing traffic and letting it through. As I pulled level with him, he was extremely offensive to me in front of my son. It's complete disbelief. So I asked him what he said. He repeated the exact same phrase, which was very offensive. And I got out of the car to ask him for his name and his number. And I said, name, can I have I want your name. And before I even had a chance to say number, he just headbutted me. Just straight headbutted me, straight away. Knocked me.
So a serving police officer headbutted
straight away,
you.
yeah, absolutely.
Now, this police officer, Mark Knight, was also found to have harassed a female member of staff when
Apparently
the investigation for your assault was ongoing.
Yes.
What do you think about the decision to let him back as a police officer while this investigation and assault was still ongoing? I
think the strange thing was, the annoying thing was how long everything took to happen and how it was kind of shelved and pushed about. But I think that, you know, the frustration was that he was on full pay for about 15, 16 months. You know, and then to find out that he'd harassed a female officer afterwards was just horrendous.
Yeah. Parm, just to bring you in as well, just hearing Ben's story there were a number of officers, he said, that were kind of standing by and didn't do anything. How difficult is it for police officers to report something that they see going wrong? How difficult is it to speak out?
Good evening first. What happens is that if an officer is brave enough to stand up and call out this sort of bad behaviour, whether it's harassment, whether it's racial, sexual, misogynistic, whatever the behaviour is, that officer is then marginalised, they are demonised and they are labelled the troublemakers, and they become the problem. And what's happening, and your previous guest Steve also mentioned this, that person doesn't get the support that they need and their careers are blighted. And even with this report that we're discussing today, and reports that came out last week, the misconduct system to get rid of these bad people is broken. It takes between 18 months and 2 years to actually go through a misconduct procedure. And during that time, that individual can rack up more complaints, more harassment complaints, more, any type of complaints before they are actually sacked. So this isn't just about the report that's come out today, and even this report which says that other warnings have been ignored. And whilst I welcome this report, I have got concerns about whether anything will actually be done. And I'm hoping that this is the report that will be the catalyst for that change.
Pam, as you said, it's been report after report after report. I mean, how bad can it be until there is actual change? How hopeful are you that change is on the way?
We are having a crisis in our policing system, and it's right across the country, and something has to be done. Now, what will happen is there are 43 chief constables up and down the country who are going to read this report, and they have to respond. In the past, the police service has been very defensive, and even in that case that you've just discussed, they will have been defensive. They won't have wanted their officer to be shown to be a bad apple or to be sacked, and that's where they close ranks. That has to stop. There's 3 things that have to happen. There has to be a safe environment for people, for serving police officers to call out bad behaviour of their colleagues. And the second one is that the vetting procedures have to be enhanced. You don't just join today and never get vetted again. You have to be re-vetted every couple of years. And the third one is this report must be taken seriously for changes to be made, and so that trust and confidence in policing can be restored.
And just, Ben, what goes through your head when you think about dialing 999 or getting the police involved again in your life? Surely this has a knock-on...
There's no confidence there at all, is there? There can't be. After the experience that I've had, it was just... Like I said, when he assaulted me, there was 5, 6, 7 police officers there with body cams on that captured that. Not one of them did anything. There was only one female later on, one officer later on that actually took to the stand and gave evidence against him. But the other 5, 6 officers claimed they saw absolutely nothing. And
your sons were in the vehicle as well at the same time.
Yes.
What impact does that have generationally then?
I think he was probably about 18 at the time, and it was really upsetting for him to see his dad not only getting headbutted but getting handcuffed on the floor, pushed on the floor, handcuffed, shoved in the back of a van. Felt very frustrated. He couldn't do anything. He was going, really upset. And he was being told by officers to stay out of it. Nothing to do with him. He obviously has a knock-on effect for my son, without a doubt.
And Ben, just hearing this report today, it's been called a tipping point. But are you hopeful that there are changes to come? Are you hopeful that changes will be made? And what change do you need to see for you to feel confident again?
I don't know if I'd ever be confident, but I think that the problem is everybody uses this phrase, a few bad apples. I think there's only a few good apples, if I'm being honest. It's institutionally, corrupt, as far as I'm concerned. My own experience, I appreciate that police have a very, very difficult job. They come across, difficult situations day in, day out. But, that's why they're there. They have to differentiate between good people and bad people. And, my experience was that nobody did anything to help me. Right. And even as it progressed through the CPS, they didn't want to charge him. We had to, just battle and battle and battle until eventually the CPS charged him. Even down to the CPS weren't even particularly, polite or nice to me on the day of the trial. I mean, it was just a really poor experience. Right. Luckily, sorry.
Ben, no, I was just stopping you mid-flow, but obviously lots to talk about, lots to do. Ben Joynes, thank you very much, and Palm Sandhu in Westminster as well, thank you.